Hey everybody, this is Mike at Anglers Sports Center here, and I'm here with Charlie from the Backdraft. Thank you for joining us. And we have the most exciting seminar of the day, way better than LJ's and everybody else's. We're going to talk about bait fishing for trophy rockfish as well as live lining. So a lot of good fun things to cover here.
Sure, we can badmouth everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. Once you have the microphone, you can do whatever you want. You're basically in charge at that point.
That's right.
So, really bait fishing for striped bass is a lot different than you would in the summer, and there are a lot of small techniques and little tips and tricks that really can make you be the difference between being successful and not successful. And as we know, when you're only looking to catch one fish, you need all the little tricks you can get. So with that, I want to kind of start with the rig. So here we have, and actually first, in case you don't know this, we're having a huge sales event. Big pen sales event, as well as lures, everything you need to get ready for striped bass next week. So this is the Penn Fierce live lining combo here. And what I want to show you here is our basic rig. So this is a fish finder rig. It is a 36-inch leader tied onto a 7 or 8/0 circle hook, which is what we're going to use in the springtime, and that is going to be attached to your rod with a snap swivel or a regular barrel swivel, and then a sliding fish finder here. So even though rockfish really travel in all parts of the water column in the spring season, you're really only going to catch them on the bottom. You could float a few baits, but you're pretty much pissing in the wind at that point. So you're going to really want to fish everything on the bottom. On your weight, you're going to really be somewhere between 1.5 and 2 ounces, maybe 2.5 if you need it. So the first tip or trick is always go as light as you can. The reason we're using a fish finder rig that slides up and down the line is we don't want the fish to pick up weight. We want there to be as little resistance as possible. So we're always going to start as light as we can, and we're going to work our way up. If there's no tide moving, I may only need a 1/2 ounce or even a 3/4 ounce. So we're always going to start there. As we work our way up, your leader line here should be fluorocarbon. And in the trophy season, I'm going to lean more toward 25 or 30 pound test. If you're around something that's going to have it's going to have abrasion on the line, you're going to probably want to stick toward 30, but you can definitely go as low as 20 on that. Going down to the hook portion, as I said, we are fishing a 7 or 8/0 circle hook. Big reason this is important is hook companies like to switch to offshore style, which I would consider a heavier wire when you start getting into those 8/0 ranges. So if you look here, I've got a nice pack of Owner inline circle hooks, fantastic tips, but it is a huge heavy wire. I don't want that weighting my bait down. I'm going to go more with something like this, the Mustad Demon Perfect, which are a light wire hook. You're not going to bend the hook, you're not going to break the hook, so you're definitely going to you want that nice wide gap, but you really want to be light on the wire. It's going to have a better presentation for your bait.
One thing to mention while you're talking about the hooks is state law says they have to be flat. You can't be the offset point, so remember that for the state.
Yeah, and all the packs you're going to want to look at are all going to say inline. Anything that says offset, no good. So the next thing on the hooks is going to also be not just the weight of the wire, but the actual gap. So as we just mentioned, they all make hooks differently. So to say you want to use a 7/0 hook all the time really depends on the maker of the hook. I'm going to attempt to hold these hooks up with this microphone. Thank you. He's my microphone stand now. So you're going to see that the gap size, that's really the big deal breaker here. Gap in between the hook tip and the shank here. That's what you're going to want to pay attention to. Some companies make a 6/0 that'd be plenty big enough. Some companies make an 8/0 that's still on the small side. So definitely pay attention to that. I did not have a chance to measure the correct one, but usually a 7/0 hook is what I'm using most of the time this year. I'll be using an 8/0 if it's a shorter or not as wide of a gap there.
One in the arena, we're using 6s and 7s, possibly 8s, but mostly the 7s kind of the go-to for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next question is, where are you going to go? Where do you want to set up? So there isn't necessarily a right answer for this, because you're not going to come to a store like us and we're not going to have schooling fish because they're not schooling this time of year. So what am I looking for? I'm looking for anywhere between 25 and 35 feet along a channel edge that has some contours, that's going to have some different tidal movement, that's going to hold bait, but where fish are also going to sit. The second thing I'm looking for in the spring, a lot of times, is a sandier or warmer bottom. There have been many times where we've done great fishing in 20 to 25 feet of water on the sand bottom because the fish simply just like heading off into that warmer area. So my general rig is going to be 4 to 6 rods, just like this Penn Fierce 4000 live liner edition, all on the bottom and in that 25 to 35 foot zone. In general, it is a war of attrition. You want to be out there as long as you can, and you want to keep your bait fresh. So that brings me to the probably most important piece, which is our bunker here. So the fresher the better, always. So you're going to be cutting 1 to 2 inch stakes anywhere. We'll say 1 to 1.5 straight through the fish. If it's really fresh, you're going to hook it through the belly. You're really going to have to make sure it's fresh though, because you do not want that tearing off the bottom. If you can hook it through the belly, you're going to get a better hookup rate. If not, you're going to hook it right through the top here. My suggestion is to change it out every 20 to 30 minutes. The oil, the scent is really going to go after that point. The second thing is chumming versus chunking. So everybody knows about chumming. You're going to take a big bucket, throw it on the side of your boat, and it's slowly going to let chunks of fish out. That's great to do, and you probably should do that. It keeps it consistent. But the best way is chunking. And so everything I'm not using, the head, the tail, is all going into small chunks. And every time I bring up my bait and change it, that's going to small chunks. Especially in the spring season, you're going to find a lot more luck chunking out bunker as you go. When the tide starts picking up or dropping off, those are going to be your key times to really rip it out there and try and get things moving.
Sometimes I'm a little different than a lot of people that are doing cut bait style fishing. I like to keep my hook exposed. I don't like to bury it way down in the body so that the point of the hook is not exposed, because the fish doesn't have to crush it in order to get to the hook. So I like, and live lining is the same thing. I try to hook it as shallow as I can and keep the bait on the line so that he can't pull off. That's just that I'd seem to do any better.
And especially when you're using this big bunker, like he's saying, if you hook it through that back, you can basically bury the whole hook. You have no exposed hook. So when you can get it through that belly and it's firm enough, that's always going to be your
just through the skin, maybe catch it back on the
Yeah, and always scoop out that nice heart and guts. Really put that stuff on there. You want to make sure you're absolutely covered in bunker. It should take at least 2 loads of laundry to get the scent off of you by the time you're done, if you're doing it right.
One old school trick from the bunker, if you fillet it or if you're staking it, a good thing to do is pull out the heart. The heart is pretty hard.
Yep.
And you keep all the guts and all the strings and all that stuff. And chumming especially, some days if the fish were really tough to get to bite, you could use that heart, put that hard through and kind of wrap up the rest of it, and it would give off a little sheen or a little oil or a little nasty blood. And that would make them bite. Maybe you'd get them to bite on that gut. Sometimes you can throw the rest of the fish away and just use the gut. But instead of chopping that up in little pieces, good idea to use that as a separate bait. You might try that out on one rod and just see what happens.
Yeah, and we all know how this is. Any given day, right? Just like any given Sunday. So you will talk to people who say, only fish LY heads, right? Just fish bunker heads only. And I've done it 100 times, and there's a day or two here or there where it works, just like floating bait, but to get that consistent hitting, but always try something new. Every day is different. Yeah, absolutely. So Charlie, I'm going to turn it over to you now for a little bit of this live lining portion.
Okay. Of course, we don't start live lining. I'm running a charter, by the way, Backdraft charter. So not that I'm plugging my business, but I am anyway. We usually troll. We don't do a lot of cut bait fishing until after we finish trolling. Once the spots start showing up, you can even use some white perch. One thing if you're using white perch that I'll suggest is that you cut the back fin off so that you don't have that. That's why the rockfish like spots so well, because they can swallow it easy. It's a softer fish. White perch, they spread out and they get those fins sticking up. They can get actually caught right on the fins. So ideal bait is live spot. Midsummer, you're talking about the smaller spot, 3-4 inches in June, early June, mid-June, when you're anchored up and doing that stuff, the live lining, sometimes the 8 or 10 inch bottom still work.
Yep.
You'd be amazed. You get that 30 or 40 inch rockfish, it's still swimming around. They'll come up and tear it up. So that's the thing. Mike showed you the fish finder rig. We actually rig our fish finder rig with the live line, and I don't use this much anymore. I'll tell you my preferred method here in a few minutes. We used to use a fish finder rig, but we kind of did it the opposite way. We would actually put the hook on the slide and put the weight on the bottom. So we would put the weight in the clip here, then we would tie our live bait to the clip. That way the line would sit on the bottom and the fish was allowed to swim up the column wherever he wanted. So if the rockfish were coming down, he'd go up. Rockfish usually bite up. So if that fish is in the column, that, you know, let's say you're in 20 or 25 feet, like Mike was saying earlier, that fish will come up and hit it. If that fish is running away from that water, he's coming at you. The thing about live lining is, with the live bait, you have to allow that fish to run. That's what's real important about these bait runners. If you want me to hold your mic, you can show them how that bait runner works.
So this is our secondary drag here, the bait runner. So when I engage this bait runner, it's gonna turn off this drag basically, and it's gonna engage a lightweight drag. It'll let the line go and you'll hear this clicking sound. It'll re-engage your regular set drag right when you start reeling. So in other words, it's basically going to be flawless. Instead of you opening your bail, closing your bail, possibly losing a fish because you snap your line down, it's going to erase all of that. And these all come with an adjustment too for that tension.
And you want it pretty loose. You want it just loose enough, just tight enough so that it can't free spool the spool when the fish hits it. When these rockfish hit the live bait, they take it and they run. And you want to allow them 5 to 10 seconds. A lot of people, when they start counting on my boat, I'll say count for 5 seconds. Well, their count goes from 1 to 5. What 5? You know, mistake. Not the thing to do. Allow that thing to run. When it's really tough and you're getting a lot of bites and not hooking, you might have to let it run 10 seconds before you set it. Circle hooks. Don't set the hook. You have to let the fish set the hook. So let that fish run. You see it running, you engage your swivel or engage your runner after 10 seconds or 5 seconds. Then you lock it up and you just let it go. As it gets tight, you come up. Just come up slow. You don't come up fast. You don't set the hook. The idea behind the circle hook is that it gets in his mouth and it turns as he bites it and starts pulling pressure, and it catches him in the jaw. Supposedly, it's not supposed to swallow the hook as often. Personal experience, I think it helps some, but not as much as we'd like it to.
Yeah.
Personal experience. Because you're letting that fish run, and his natural reaction is to get it down. So that's just a thing, something to keep in mind. If you can't afford it, or if you don't have any, with the bait runners, the way I like to fish them is to let your line out however far you're doing. Leave the bail open and hold the line with your trigger finger. So if we let this on this line out, we open this bail, and I'd have Mike hold it just a finger, just one finger. So let this line go here. Just hook my finger. There you go. So you don't want to hold it real tight, but you'll feel that rockfish. He'll come up and he'll hit it, and you'll feel it going, and you follow him down. You feel that fish pulling. You point the rod at him. You let go of the line on the way down. That fish is gone. He's already running. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Throw the bail or crank the hook and wait. Then he pulls it tight. The rod tip comes down. Then you come up slow. You go.
And that's really one of the most exciting parts of live lining is you actually feel the fish before he gets hit.
Exactly.
You'll start feeling your bait speed up. So it's going normal. You start feeling that erratic. You know that hit's about to come, so you can prepare, like he's saying, to strike.
Yeah, I've been around 30 years, and I've used live line years ago. We didn't do it as much as we do now. We do it more and more.
Yeah.
But that's the hardest thing to do, is to allow that fish to run. Second hardest thing for me, being the old school guy, was not setting that hook. With the straight J hook, you let that fish run for 10, and when you come up, you put the power to it. You want that body, you wanted to get it. But with the circle hooks, you'll lose more fish. You will not catch as many straight off the bite as you do with regular J hook. The old days also, we used to use a small treble hook,
Right.
which was even better set. But you can be patient, you still can catch your limits. It's just you might miss a few before you get it.
Yeah.
Especially with me on a charter and inexperienced people. You know, they'll get to talking, like I was showing you, you hold your finger on the line, and he'll be, well, Mike, how you doing today? You know, this has been pretty cool. And the next thing you know, the rod's going to go on his hand, and the first thing they do is clamp the line and pull back.
Yeah.
So have you lost that one? Oh, and a sign of that happening to you, when you bring that rod in, check your bait, and you see that spot has been scaled, that means you had the rockfish on it. He had a hold of it, and when you pulled it, he slid right down the side and took the scales right off. They'll actually be smooth on the side where he took the scales off the spot. Bluefish, they're going to be bit, chopped up in pieces. But if it's a rockfish, they'll scale it right down the sides.
And going back to what you were just talking about, I never even touched on hook setting with a circle hook, and same thing. Obviously, the laws have changed pretty recently, and I find it actually, it's very entertaining for me to watch my friends just whiff on these fish. But for the sake of trying to catch fish, it's going to be the same type of thing when you're going to chunk and bottom fish out there. So it looks awkward and it feels awkward. For me, I'm getting hit, and it is going to be a very slow pull is my hook set. So pointing my rod down and a very slow pull once I know he has it. So that's going to be your go-to for keeping it. Big thing as well, just keep tension on. You know, even though you're slow pulling it, you still want to keep that tension on because you need that hook to turn and you need that hook to go through, which is the other important part of buying circle hooks that have good tips on them that are going to penetrate, because it's not just you and 20 pounds. Man, I'm dropping that a lot. Hitting the fish, it does need to just go slide in.
One thing I didn't touch on my rods on my boat, I go to 100% fluorocarbon on my reels. All my bottom reels and everything, it's expensive. I like 14-pound test fluorocarbon, and I fill the whole reel because I use them for both bottom fishing to catch the small, and then I'll use them for live line. On the tough days when the fishing's really tough, I believe the fluorocarbon makes a big difference.
Absolutely.
And I will not, if I can, I won't put any weight on the rod at all. So when we showed you this fish finder rig, and the way we have it rigged up, I would do away with all that hardware right there, and I would tie the hook right to the lead line coming off the rod. No weight, no nothing. Just take all that off. So all I would do is tie my hook right there. And then, like I said, no weight at all. Now, if you're anchored when we're live running, you're obviously anchored when we're live running. So what you want to do is, if you have to get the weight down, if the tide starts running real strong, I like to go to the egg sinker, and instead of the clip on here, I would use like that size barrel swivel that you can actually crank up through your eyes if you have to. And I will put the swivel, put the egg sinker. This happens to be an ounce. There's two of them in there. And what that is, that's a hole on each end, and the line goes all the way through that lead. So that lead can actually slide up and down the line instead of
Yeah, absolutely.
and then you got the swivel to hold it. Then you have about a 24-inch leader or so, maybe 3 feet, depending on what you like. Then you have the leader and your circle hook, and then that's where you live bait. And you can also, if it's really a light tide, I'll use splits on it. Put a couple splits on it. Just squeeze it right to the line above the swivel and go from there. But I use monofluorocarbon all the way through. if you don't want to use fluorocarbon, you don't have the money for it, then use a good monofilament, maybe 10, 14 pound, and then use a leader. Use a 2-foot leader, a 3-foot leader of fluorocarbon. It will help.
Yeah.
I've had days where I can catch them sitting right next to somebody, and the difference is the fluorocarbon.
And as you said, it's even the weight of the fluorocarbon. So sometimes if you're just not getting action and you are fishing 30 or fishing a heavier pound, just size down to 25, 20 pound. Those little things can be the difference maker. I feel like we feel that way with finesse light tackle fishing, but it's the same holds true for bait fishing, that those little things can be the difference.
With the lag on it, you want the fish to look as natural as possible.
Yeah.
So that's why you don't usually need weight. The fish will go down, the fish will go up. But when the tide's real strong, and especially if you're using a smaller size spot, sometimes he needs help to get down in that tough tide. So you get that down, but you might bounce the bottom, but you might pull it up a point.
Yeah. And spot are coming up earlier and earlier now, so the live lining is starting early and earlier. The general early season, I think you touched on it, fish is white perch. So you trim the top of the white perch of the fins so they don't point out. And it's funny because it's almost like a light switch. They'll hit the white perch right up until the spot comes, and then you can't get them to touch a white perch. So if you want to try early season, especially opening weekend, something like that, that's really the way you got to go. You got to fish white perch, and it's not going to be as successful as spot. It's not going to be as good, but you can definitely catch fish. But again, the second those spots show up, they don't want anything to do with it.
And sometimes it's location.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the northern end up above the bridge and stuff like that, they won't get the spot as early as I do down around here and chop that river and that area. So they're maybe a couple of weeks behind us as far as the spot goes. So perch is a natural thing up there. They're still pretty good. But the smaller the better. And a key, and I really believe this, the key is letting that perch pick him up and watch him spread out and he cut his back fin. Because it does allow the rockfish to swallow it down a lot easier.
Awesome stuff. Well, thank you so much, Charlie, for joining me out here to talk about some bait. Thank you guys all for tuning in, and make sure you come to our sale. It's going to be great. It's going on today and tomorrow. We have food. We have a bunch more talks coming up. I think at least 2 or 3 more. Huge sales on pen, lures, all kinds of other stuff. It's a great time.
Had a great day.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having us today.